Monique.
All right, we're live streaming. Go ahead, Dr. Ed.
Zion says, the Eternal has forsaken me. My sovereign has forgotten me. Can a mother forget her babe or stop loving the child of her womb? Even these could forget, but I could not forget you. Indeed, I have inscribed you on the palms of my hands. Your safety is continually in my thoughts. Your builders drive out your destroyers, and those who wrought havoc with you depart from you. Look up and see. They are gathering and coming to you, all of them. As I live, says the Eternal One, you shall put all of them on like ornaments. You shall bind them on yourself like a bride. Your ruins, your abandoned places, your desolate land shall be crowded with people who sought to devour you shall be far off. Then children you have mourned shall yet say in your hearing, this place is too crowded for us. Make room for us to dwell in. And you shall think, who bore all these children for me when I was in mourning and childless exiled and left by the road, and who brought these up? I was alone. Where did they come from? Thus says the Eternal God, I lift my hand to the nations. I raise my ensign to the peoples. They shall cradle your sons in their arms and carry your daughters on their shoulders. Kings shall serve them for you. Their queens shall nurse them for you. They shall bow down to you, faces to the ground, and lick the dust of your feet. Then you shall know that I am the Eternal, that none who trust in me are to put to shame. Can spoil be taken away from a warrior? Can a victor's captives escape? And yet, says the Eternal One, the warrior's captives shall be taken away. The tyrant's spoil shall be retrieved. For I will contend with those who contend with you, and I will save your children. And I will make your oppressors eat their own flesh. They shall be drunk on their own blood as though it were wine. And all flesh shall know that I, the Eternal, am your Savior, your Redeemer, the Mighty One of Jacob. Where is your mother's bill of divorce, with which I sent her away? Asks the Eternal One. Which of my creditors was it of whom I sold you? You were sold because of your own sins, for your own transgressions. Your mother was sent away. Why? When I came, was no one there, no one to answer when I called. Is my hand really too weak to redeem? Do I lack the power to save? With my rebuke, I dry up the sea and turn rivers into desert. Fish stink from the lack of water and die on the parched ground. I shroud the skies in blackness and make your clothing sackcloth. The Eternal God has taught me how to speak, even to those tried of speech. Morning by morning, God awakens my ear, teaching me to listen. The Eternal God opened my ear, and I did not rebel. I did not turn away. I gave my back to those who beat me, my cheeks to those who tore out my hair. I do not hide my face from insult and splitting, for the Eternal God will help me, and therefore I feel no disgrace, but I have set my face like flint, knowing that I shall not be put to shame. My champion is near. Who dare contend with me? Let us stand up together to be judged. Who are my adversaries? Let them count me. Let them confront me. With the Eternal God to help me, who can declare me wrong? They shall wear out like a garment, like moth-eaten cloth. This is wow. Who among you reveres the Eternal and respects the words of God's servant? Who walks in darkness, though he has no light? Who trusts in the Eternal and leads upon God? But you, all of you, who kindle your own fire, who set torches alight, go walk by the blaze of your fire, by the torches you have lit. This comes to you from my hand. You shall lie down in pain. Listen to me, all who pursue justice, all who seek the Eternal. Look to the rock from which you were hewn. quarry from which you were cut. Look back to Abraham, your father, and Sarah, who bore you. When I called him, he was alone. But I blessed him and made him many. Just so the Eternal will comfort Zion, comforting all her ruins, making her wilderness like Eden, her desert like the eternal garden, where joy and gladness are found, thanksgiving and the strains of song.
All
Well,
right. Wow.
I got to tell you, that is really something.
Good stuff. Licking dust from my feet, eating your own flesh.
Uh,
It's like what your drill sergeant tries to teach you when you join the
oh,
Marines, right?
oh my God.
That's something, isn't it? And is it what do you think when it talks about everything's coming back, becoming the desert becomes like the Eternal's garden in the Garden of Eden, right? Wasn't that part of it? Anyway, what do you think of that?
I think that whoever wrote this, whoever wrote this had to be smoking something or taking something. I mean, read this stuff. It's like it's almost delusional. What I could never think in the same way. And this is which prophet?
Isaiah. That
This is
Isaiah.
Isaiah. We're learning about Isaiah. He's quite a guy. He went back to Egypt, and he's quite interesting. And again, it's you you accept the eternal or dreadful diseases of Egypt, about which you know, but will inflict them upon your enemies. I mean, I know that I'm going back to Deuteronomy, but it is kind of weird.
Yeah. It's Isaiah is another. It's like you are. I feel like when I read Isaiah, it's almost like I'm reading in another dimension. It's almost like, what is
Oh
he?
yeah, it's almost like he wrote it on LSD. I can't. If I had to write this, I don't think I could. I don't think I could because it's so fourth dimensional.
Hmm.
Maybe if you did LSD, you could write something like that.
Yeah, but I'm not into blotter. I'm not.
Yeah.
You. I mean, Mike Bodo probably remembers blotter. Uh,
Oh, yeah.
Oh boy.
Kids are into blotter, and not me. I had to pay for my own college, not me.
Who would like to start Deuteronomy chapter
Read it.
7? All right, Monique.
And if you do obey these rules and observe them carefully, the Eternal your God will maintain faithfully for you the covenant made on oath with your fathers. God will favor you and bless you and multiply you, blessing your issue from the womb and your produce from the soil, your new grain and wine and oil, your calving from the herd and your lambing from the flock, in the land sworn to your fathers to be assigned to you. You shall be blessed above all other peoples. There shall be no sterile male or female among you or among your livestock. The Eternal will ward off from you from any sickness, all sickness. God will not bring upon you any of the dreadful diseases of Egypt, about which you know, but will inflict them upon all of your enemies. You shall destroy all the peoples that the Eternal your God delivers to you, showing them no pity. And you shall not worship their gods, for that would be a snare to you. Should you say to yourselves, these nations are more numerous than we, how can we dispossess them? You need have no fear of them. You have but to bear in mind what the Eternal your God did to Pharaoh and all the Egyptians. The wondrous acts that you saw with your own eyes, the signs and the portents, the mighty hand and the outstretched arm by which the Eternal your God liberated you. Thus will the Eternal your God do to all your peoples you now send fear. The Eternal your God will also send a plague against them until those who are left in hiding perish before you. Do not stand in dread of them, for the Eternal your God is in your midst, a great and awesome God. The Eternal your God will dislodge the peoples before you little by little. You will not be able to put an end to them at once, else the wild beasts will multiply to your hurt. The eternal your God will deliver them up to you, throwing them into utter panic until they are wiped out. God will deliver their kings into your hand, and you shall obliterate their names from under the heavens. No one shall stand up to you until you have wiped them out. You shall consign the images of their gods to the fire. You shall not cover the snare thereby, for that is abhorrent to the eternal your God. You must not bring an abhorrent thing into your house, or you will be prescribed like it. You must reject it as abominable and abhorrent, for it is prescribed. You shall faithfully observe all the instruction that I enjoin upon you today, that you may thrive and increase and be able to possess the land that the eternal promised on oath to your fathers. Remember the long way that the eternal your God has made you travel in the wilderness these past 40 years in order to test your hardships to learn what was in your hearts, whether you would keep the divine commandments or not. God subjected you to the hardship of hunger and then gave you manna to eat, which neither you nor your ancestors had ever known, in order to teach you that a human being does not live on bread alone, but that one may live on anything that the eternal decrees. The clothes upon you did not wear out, nor did your feet swell these 40 years. Bear in mind that the eternal your God disciplines you just as a householder disciplines his son. Therefore, keep the commandments of the eternal your God, walk in God's ways, and show reverence. For the eternal your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with streams and springs and fountains issuing from plain and hill, a land of wheat and barley, of vines, figs, and pomegranates, a land of olive trees and honey, a land where you may eat food without stint, where you will lack nothing, a land whose rocks are iron, and from whose hills you can mine copper. When you have eaten your fill, give thanks to the eternal your God for the good land given to you. Take care lest you forget the eternal your God and fail to keep the divine commandments, rules and laws which I enjoin upon you today. When you have eaten your fill and have built fine houses to live in, and your herds and flocks have multiplied, and your silver and gold have increased, and everything you own has prospered, beware lest your heart grow haughty and you forget the eternal your God, who freed you from the land of Egypt, the house of bondage, who led you through the great and terrible wilderness with its serpents and scorpions, a parched land with no water in it, who brought forth water from you from the flinty rock, who fed you in the wilderness with manna, which your ancestors had never known, in order to test you by hardships only to benefit you in the end. And you said to yourselves, my own power and the might of my own hand have won this wealth for me. Remember, this is the eternal your God, who gives you the power to get wealth in fulfillment of the covenant made on oath with your fathers, as it is still the case. If you do forget the eternal your God and follow other gods to serve them or bow down to them, I warn you to this day that you shall certainly perish. Like the nations of the eternal will cause you to perish before you, so shall you perish, because you did not heed the eternal your God. Hear, O Israel, you are about to cross the Jordan to go in and dispossess nations greater and more populous than you, great cities with walls sky high, a people great and tall, the Anakites of whom you have knowledge, for you have heard it said, who can stand up to the children of Anak? Know then this day that none other than the eternal your God is crossing at your head, a devouring fire. It is God who will wipe them out, subduing them before you, that you may quickly dispossess and destroy them, as the eternal promised you. And when the eternal your God has thrust them from your path, say not to yourselves, the eternal has enabled us to possess this land because of our virtues. It is rather because of the wickedness of these nations that the eternal is dispossessing them before you. It is not because of your virtues and your rectitude that you will be able to possess that country, but it is because of their wickedness that the eternal your God is dispossessing those nations before you. And in order to fulfill the oath that the eternal made to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Gary brought this up last week, that God said to the Israelites, it's not because I favor you so much, it's because the other peoples are so wicked.
There it is.
Remember Gary
Yeah.
brought that up last week?
Yes.
What do you think, Gary?
Yeah. I mean, I'm saying like that and, well, I mean, I was thinking of something different, but I mean, most of this Parsha, even it's, the title of the Parsha, Ikev, is a result of, it's all cause and effect always. God has said, if this is done, then this will happen. Everything that's done, everything that isn't done affects something, either sometimes in a way that you might notice right away, sometimes you might notice it somewhere down the road, you might never in a lifetime. But everything that you do and don't do, it's cause and effect.
Welcome, Mr. Philip Weiner. How are you?
Yes, Phil, good evening. Wow, what a pleasant surprise.
This is something. This is great.
That's great,
Yeah,
yes.
thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, every week.
Didn't I did.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, but we could put you on the list though, Phil, if you want to,
Yeah, put him on the list.
Yes.
He's been coming to these types of things.
That's,
Yeah, just send me your email, or I'll just give me your email and I'll stick you in there.
yeah. That's great. Thanks. Welcome, Phil. And as you were saying, Gary, too, that it's not because that
The
it's
people
rather
are so
because
great.
the wickedness of the nations, but also talking about Israel, that God is saying it's not because of your virtues either, but I need to fulfill the oath that I made to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob,
Exactly.
which is absolutely amazing, and it's such a miracle too, and it's all these lessons that come with that, like that, the lessons of the brothers who try to get rid of Joseph, and Joseph ends up becoming the savior of Israel, and all of the things that, and this is the beauty that I love about the Bible so much, is the truth and the honesty of it all. I mean, nothing's wiped out. Nothing is like buried. It's all right there. Like, as far as, all the, the Eternal says to go and possess the land, and everyone's like, no, 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 they're giants and everything else, and that these stories are still with us today. Like, all these stories of when people have fallen down, and that, but God is still there, and God is still hopefully bringing them to that land, right? The land. So
And God doesn't have to sugarcoat or BS. Oh, you're such wonderful people. I mean, you're so.
that's right.
Yeah, it's just that the people that are there are worse than you. Plus, I made a promise, and I keep my promises.
That's right. That's right. Thank you so much, Monique. You want to keep going, or do you want to?
No, I think I'll pass.
Okay. Does anyone want to pick it up at 6?
I will.
All right, Gary.
Oh, excuse me. Know then that it is not for any virtue of yours that the Eternal your God has given you this good land to possess, for you are a stiff-necked people. Kashay Oref. Remember, never forget how you provoked the Eternal your God to anger in the wilderness. From the day that you left the land of Egypt until you reached this place, you have continued defiant toward the Eternal. At Horeb, you so provoked the Eternal that the Eternal was angry enough with you to have destroyed you. I had ascended the mountain to receive the tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant that the Eternal had made with you, and I stayed on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights, eating no bread and drinking no water. And the Eternal gave me the 2 tablets of stone, inscribed by the finger of God, with the exact words that the Eternal had addressed to you on the mountain out of the fire on the day of the assembly. At the end of those 40 days and 40 nights, the Eternal gave me the 2 tablets of stone, the tablets of the covenant. And the Eternal One said to me, hurry, go down from here at once, for the people whom you brought out of Egypt have acted wickedly. They have been quick to stray from the path that I enjoined upon them. They have made themselves a molten image. The Eternal further said to me, I see that this is a stiff-necked people. Let me alone, and I will destroy them and blot out their name from under heaven, and I will make you a nation far more numerous than they. I started down the mountain, a mountain ablaze with fire, the 2 tablets of the covenant in my 2 hands. I saw how you had sinned against the Eternal your God. You had made yourselves a molten calf. You had been quick to stray from the path that the Eternal had enjoined upon you. Thereupon I gripped the 2 tablets and flung them away with my both hands, smashing them before your eyes. I threw myself down before the Eternal, eating no bread and drinking no water 40 days and 40 nights as before, because of the great wrong you had committed, doing what displeased and vexed the Eternal. For I was in the dread of the fierce anger against you which moved the Eternal to wipe you out. And that time too the Eternal gave heed to me. Moreover, the Eternal was angry enough with Aaron to have destroyed him. So I also interceded for Aaron at that time. As for the sinful thing you made, the calf, I took it and put it to the fire. I broke it to bits and ground it thoroughly until it was fine as dust, and I threw its dust into the brook that comes down from the mountain. Again you provoked the Eternal at Taberah, and at Massa, and at Kibroth Hatava. And when the Eternal sent you on from Kadesh Barnea, saying, Go up and take possession of the land that I am giving you, you flouted the command of the Eternal your God, whom you did not put your trust in nor obey. As long as I have known you, you have been defiant toward the Eternal. When I lay prostrate before the Eternal those 40 days and 40 nights, because the Eternal was determined to destroy you, I prayed to the Eternal and said, O eternal God, do not annihilate your very own people, whom you redeemed in your majesty, and whom you freed from Egypt with a mighty hand. Give thought to your servants Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and pay no heed to the stubbornness of this people, its wickedness and its sinfulness. Else the country from which you freed us will say, It was because the Eternal was powerless to bring them into the land promised to them, and because of having rejected them, that their God brought them out to have them die in the wilderness. Yet they are your very own people, whom you freed with your great might and your outstretched arm. Does anybody else want to read? I can keep going on if not. And good evening, Cynthia.
Yeah. Hi, Cynthia. How are you?
Very good.
Did
That's
you
good.
want me to pick it up, or does
Yeah,
Cynthia?
sure. I can read.
Oh, Cynthia, go for it.
10-10, Sylvia, 10-1.
Okay. Thereupon the Eternal One said to me, Carve out 2 tablets of stone like the first, and come up to me on the mountain and make an ark of wood. I will inscribe on the tablets the commandments that were on the first tablets that you smashed, and you shall deposit them in the ark. I made an ark of acacia wood and carved out 2 tablets of stone like the first. I took the 2 tablets with me and went up the mountain. After inscribing on the tablets the same text as on the first, the 10 commandments that the Eternal addressed to you on the mountain out of the fire on the day of the assembly, the Eternal gave them to me. Then I left and went down from the mountain, and I deposited the tablets in the ark that I had made, where they still are, as the Eternal had commanded me. From Beeroth Jaakan, the Israelites marched to Mosera. Aaron died there and was buried there, and his son Eleazar became priest in his stead. From there they marched to Good God, and from Good God to Jotbath, a region of running brooks. At that time, the Eternal set apart the tribe of Levi to carry the ark of the Eternal's covenant, to stand in attendance upon the Eternal, and to bless in God's name, as is still the case. That is why Levi has received no hereditary portion along with its kin. The Eternal is its portion, as the Eternal your God spoke concerning it. I had stayed on the mountain, as I did the first time, 40 days and 40 nights, and the Eternal heeded me once again. The Eternal agreed not to destroy you, and the Eternal One said to me, Up, resume the march at the head of the people, that they may go in and possess the land that I swore to their fathers to give them. And now, Israel, what does the Eternal your God demand of you? Only this, to revere the Eternal your God, to walk only in divine paths, to love and to serve the Eternal your God with all your heart.
Can we just pause for a second right here? I love the fact that Moses is able to kind of barter with God, right? I mean, isn't that kind of the most amazing part of these things when, don't destroy them. Please don't destroy them. I mean, it's like,
But Mike, this is all in retrospect, which is kind of interesting. I always this parsha really gets me going because, who is this for? Is this for Moses to blow his own horn, or is this for the people? Again, this is Moses telling the story again for a second time of what we've heard all at once. We heard it was it Exodus? We heard it all. We heard it all in Exodus. Again, this is probably because the people get to hear this only one day a year or a couple days a year, and he wants to make sure everybody knows A, what he did, and B, you better follow this or you're in big trouble. So again, it's the repetition and repetition of the Torah, and this one really gets me because it's, hey, I'm Moses, you better not screw with me because I talk directly to God and I do exactly what he tells me. So you better be careful. It's really amazing.
Right.
I think
This-
also too that I'm sorry, Mike.
No, go ahead, Gary.
No, I was gonna say I think it's that too, but I also think that it is in the it is retrospective, but I think he's trying to just like teach them, like, because he's talking about everything like matter of factly, like when we got here, God got was so angry, God did, and then after God got mad at me because of what you did, and then now I can't go into the at this time because his time is coming to the end, like he's looking back and he could say these things now, and I think he's trying to teach them that, but he's also again trying to really instill the idea of cause and effect. If you do
but this is like the State of the Union. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of, yeah.
But the brilliance, along with all of that, which I agree with both of your points, I think when we get to verse 12 here, and he just forms it so simply. What does God demand of you? What is it? Only this: to revere the eternal your God, to walk only in divine paths, and to love and serve the eternal your God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul. Isn't that the V'ahavta? Isn't that it?
Yeah, right.
And that is
well,
and it sounds so simple here, right? Doesn't it? It just sounds like, oh, that's it. It's so simple. Yet, what is life, right? Life is a bunch of stuff that comes down on us and hammers us from left and right. We got bills to pay. We can't so. But only if we could revere the eternal our God, then everything might work out. Maybe. What do you think, Cynthia?
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. I think he right here he summarizes the whole Torah in one paragraph.
There you go. Yeah.
I love
that's
it.
why
Mike.
the V'ahavta is so important too. Like even in, you have a prayer service, you do all these different prayers, but like when you recite the V'ahavta and the Shema, like that's the real, that really is.
That's right. It's like a grounding, isn't it? It's
What there again. It's what it's all about.
Everyone becomes one around that concept. The one.
And
God.
like where it says that you know this day and set it upon your heart, like not just that you know it, but know it such that it's in your soul, so that everything you do, your actions are guided by it. Everything you see and perceive is through that prism. Not that you merely know it, but that you kind of live it. You totally, b'chol levavecha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol miodecha. With all your heart, all your soul, and all your.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. All right, Cynthia, where were we? We were at the bottom here.
Okay, 12 then. 12, I guess.
Yeah.
And
12.
now, okay.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
Ready? Okay.
Yeah.
And now, O Israel, what does the eternal your God demand of you? Only this: to revere the eternal your God, to walk only in divine paths, to love and to serve the eternal your God with all your heart and soul, keeping the Eternal's commandments and laws, which I enjoin upon you today for your good. Mark the heavens to their uttermost reaches, belong to the Eternal your God, the earth and all that is on it. Yet it was to your ancestors the Eternal was drawn out of love for them, so that you, their lineal descendants, were chosen from among all peoples, as is now the case. Cut away, therefore, the thickening about your hearts and stiffen your necks no more. For the Eternal your God is God supreme and Lord supreme, the great, the mighty, and the awesome God, who shows no favor and takes no bribe, but upholds the cause of the fatherless and the widow, and befriends the stranger, providing food and clothing. You too must befriend the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You must revere the Eternal. Only your God shall you worship. To God shall you hold fast, and by God's name shall you swear. The Eternal is your glory and your God, who wrought for you those marvelous, awesome deeds that you saw with your own eyes. Your ancestors went down to Egypt 70 persons, and now the Eternal your God has made you as numerous as the stars of heaven. Love, therefore, the Eternal your God, and always keep God's charge, God's laws, God's rules, and God's commandments. Take thought this day that it was not your children who neither experienced nor witnessed the lessons of the Eternal your God. God's majesty, mighty hand, and outstretched arm, the signs and the deeds that God performed in Egypt against Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and all his land. What God did to Egypt's army, its horses and chariots, how the Eternal rolled back upon them the waters of the Sea of Reeds when they were pursuing you, thus destroying them once and for all. What God did for you in the wilderness before you arrived in this place, and what God did to Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, son of Reuben, when the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them, along with their households, their tents, and every living thing in their train from amidst all Israel. But that is you who saw with your own eyes all the marvelous deeds that the Eternal performed. Keep, therefore, all the instruction that I enjoin upon you today, so that you may have the strength to enter and take possession of the land that you are about to cross into and possess, and that you may long endure upon the soil that the Eternal swore to your fathers to assign to them and to their heirs, a land flowing with milk and honey. For the land that you are about to enter and possess is not like the land of Egypt from which you have come. There the grain you sowed had to be watered by your own labors, like a vegetable garden. But the land you are about to cross into and possess, a land of hills and valleys, soaks up its water from the rains of heaven. It is a land which the Eternal your God looks after, on which the Eternal your God always keeps an eye, from year's beginning to year's end. If then you obey the commandments that I enjoin upon you this day, loving the Eternal your God and serving God with all your heart and soul, I will grant the rain for your land in season, the early rain and the late. You shall gather in your new grain and wine and oil. I will also provide grass in the fields for your cattle, and thus you shall eat your fill. Take care not to be lured away to serve other gods and bow to them, for the Eternal's anger will flare up against you, shutting up.
Can we pause here for a second? I just wanted to, what did you think when you were reading about how God keeps an eye on the land? Always.
I was thinking of that too.
What do you think? Wow, that's something.
I mean, it just makes it, the land of maybe the Jewish people or the Israelites. So it just, somebody's always watching everything you do. Yeah. Something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. And also, like the page before this one, when Moses is talking about God as being a God of everything, even of all the heavens that they can see. I mean, that to me is so magnificent that they would have that concept, or Moses would have that concept, 5,000 years ago, like that whole, without really knowing all about astrology or what even Einstein was talking about last century. It's like, how can these things be so truthful and be so old at the same time? It's so remarkable.
This is Ed. Can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure Philip, who's joined us for the first time. Phil, this is Torah Underground. And what that means is that we discuss it as we interpret it, not what we think it means, but what would individually, what we want to talk about and what our own interpretation it is. So there's no right or wrong answer, and we're not following those of the sages and soothsayers in some cases. These are our own feelings about what we're reading. So you can have any opinion you'd like, and that's great.
Thank you.
Did I say it okay?
Yes.
No, I just wanted to comment. It was on the last page where they were talking about being, I don't know if it was kind or be kind, basically be kind to the stranger,
Right.
because you were once a stranger.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me go back to there. Yep, there it is. There it is right there.
yeah,
That's right.
you must befriend the stranger because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And I just was thinking, as you said that, about the immigrants and the refugees. And I think we always have to remember that when we're thinking in terms of immigrants and refugees.
That's right. Good
And
point.
that's repeated throughout the Torah too. I mean,
And I mean, a lot of I know you've done so much work, Phil, with people who were, desecrated, decimated with, hate crimes, and how does that truthfulness reflect some of the work that you're doing? I mean, I think what you're doing is being kind to the stranger and going to, Burma and trying to work out the past, as it were.
No, I think it's very, very important, not just to go and help, but to also the way that we treat people here who are immigrants. And it's funny, I don't listen to radio very often, to talk shows, except if I want to raise my blood pressure. But I hear people, and obviously a lot of them were from families of immigrants, and now they're turning and attacking the current immigrants. Why are we letting these people in? Well, that was said to your grandparents and your parents, and I think people just forget that, forget who we are and what we've come from. I had a friend call a while ago and say, why should we take in any immigrants from Ukraine?
Wow.
And and I think we've got to go back. Don't forget the stranger.
Mm-hmm.
If human beings were naturally good and did this automatically, God wouldn't have had to keep repeating us and telling us to do it.
That's right. That's right.
and the thing too to keep in mind about immigrants is people come here a lot. I mean, in desperate, like our, the Jews that were in places that they got kicked out of that came here. It's not like that they were like, oh God, we can't wait to leave here, and they were forced out.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't so it's difficult to, like, a lot of people don't understand that. They think people just come over here and say, hey, yeah, I want to go over and live in America, hey, it's like you end up coming over here for, things may be better than where you are, but it's not just that though, but you're in a position where like I say, like my grandparents, I mean, got thrown out. They had to go somewhere.
They didn't have a choice, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
People that come here, they have to leave their home. As a matter of fact, Phil, it was the morning that you did the service that when you spoke at the temple. The night before that, and I think you were there. The maybe you were there. The gentleman from the what is it? The Haitian immigration and from, I think, Dorchester or Mattapan he was from, and he was stressing that, like, like he was talking about a lot of the Haitian immigrants that came here. He's like, you know, you got to understand, like, look, these people, like, they don't want to leave their homes and their life and their families and go thousands of miles away to a different, you know. But some people here think that that's, yay, let's go over to America, yeah, Uh,
Right. No, that's a good point. That's a good point. All right. Shall we continue with the reading? Phil, would you want to pick it up at 17? I think Cynthia is left for a moment.
For the Eternal's anger will flare up against you, shutting up the skies, so that there will be no rain and the ground will not yield its produce. And you will soon perish from the good land that the Eternal is assigning to you. Therefore, impress these my words upon your very heart, bind them as a sign on your hand, and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. And teach them to your children, reciting them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. And inscribe them on your doorposts of your house and on your gates, to the end that you and your children may endure in the land that the Eternal swore to your forefathers to assign them, as long as there is heaven over the earth.
Wow.
There's a heaven over the earth. If then you faithfully keep all this instruction that I command you, loving the Eternal your God, walking in all God's ways, and holding fast to God, the Eternal will dislodge before you all these nations. You will dispossess nations greater and more numerous than you. Every spot on your foot treads shall be yours. Your territory shall extend from the wilderness to the Lebanon and from the river, the Euphrates, to the western sea. No one shall stand up to you. The Eternal, your God, will put the dread and fear of you over the whole land in which you set forth, as promised.
And that concludes our reading for tonight.
that,
Thank
that
you
other
very much.
paragraph reiterates like the Viahafta. Teach when you lie down, when you rise up, when you're home, when you're away. Teach them to your children. Put them on the doorpost. Amozozot beitecha. Tefillin. Totafot beinenecha. Is this? Totally saturate your whole mind and being.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
It's an incredible guidance, right? Guidance. I love it. Wow. And it's so important that we read that every Saturday, every Friday night. Is it read every Friday night or mostly
It's
Saturday?
read 3 times a day, technically. I mean, if you went
Technically. Wow.
it's read in every service, the Viahafta.
And so this is not the exact passage which the Viahafta comes from. Is this it, or is this not?
It's the Viahafta, I think, was in last week's Parsha. Viet Hanan, I think it was in there.
Okay.
Because I did a devar on it when I led services last week or whatever.
All right. Yeah, I think Deuteronomy 6.
Yeah,
is that right? Something like that.
Yeah, Vishamartam et...
Okay.
Yeah, what was it, number 18?
18, yeah.
Yeah. Vishamartam et divrei le'al v'vechem al shechem v'chadtam
So, Michael, what are you working on right now? Anything interesting that I'm going to see on Channel 7? soon?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. I can't really describe it yet because it's still in the works, as